You will think this is legend, but what if I told you that a single rider, alone on the horizon, could herald the collapse of an empire? The dust swirling beneath his horse's hooves carried whispers of doom, unseen by the 80,000 warriors marching with the confidence of men certain of victory. They had crossed rivers, burned villages, and crushed every foe in their path. But now, without knowing it, they had stepped into the jaws of a trap so masterfully laid that even as death closed in, they would not realize they had been hunted until it was far too late. Welcome to Whispering Myths, where the dust-covered pages of history come alive. Mongol horsemen once thundered across continents, their ruthless tactics erasing enemies before they even realized it. Join us as we uncover the secrets of the empire that changed human history. The Mongols did not fight like other armies. Where others sought honor in a clash of swords, the sons of the steppe found triumph in silence and shadows. Scouts, like ghosts, slipped past enemy lines, reading the wind, watching, waiting. This ambush had been planned for weeks, maybe months, a deadly puzzle set in motion by men who could vanish like smoke across the plains. Even the land itself seemed to conspire with them. Endless grass, gentle hills masking movement, and a sky so wide that it swallowed sound. As the enemy columns stretched for miles, their banners snapping in the dry wind, they had no idea they were being encircled. A feigned retreat had lured them deeper, farther from water, farther from safety. At night, they heard nothing but their own restless sleep, never knowing that Mongol riders lay just beyond the moonlight, watching every fire they lit, every careless laugh they shared. This was not merely a battle in waiting. It was a game of patience and terror. Like wolves stalking wounded prey, the Mongols had already chosen where the blood would spill. When the killing began, it would be sudden, merciless, and inescapable. The earth itself seemed to tighten, as if it, too, knew what was coming. And somewhere, hidden among the tall grasses, a silent command passed from rider to rider. Not yet. Wait. At dawn, the horizon bled crimson, not from battle, but from the rising sun. The enemy awoke weary. Their supplies stretched thin after weeks of pursuit. They believed the Mongols were broken, fleeing in desperation. What they could not see were the thousands of hooves pressed lightly into the earth overnight, circling them like a tightening snare. Far from the column's center, Mongol scouts signaled silently, mirrors flashing brief bursts of light to hidden riders. To an untrained eye, nothing stirred. Yet, with each passing hour, the trap drew closer. Every movement of the enemy was anticipated, every blind spot exploited. The Mongols knew that hunger weakens even the strongest army, that thirst cracks morale long before blades meet. Wells had been poisoned or destroyed, pastures burned to ash. As the enemy advanced, they unknowingly followed the path their hunters had chosen, straight into a vast, shallow valley with only two narrow exits. It felt like open ground, safe for rest and regrouping, but it was a cage built by genius. By nightfall, distant riders appeared on the ridges, just silhouettes against the fading sky. The enemy saw them and laughed, believing they had finally cornered the elusive steppe riders. Encouraged, they pitched camp in the center of the valley. Drums rolled, signaling preparation for a dawn attack. But above them, on the slopes where darkness gathered, Mongol banners silently rose like spirits. Their archers lay in silence, horses tethered, waiting for a single signal. To strike too early would spoil the design. To wait meant certain slaughter for their prey. The valley slept under a cold moon, but death already sat among them. Somewhere in the stillness, a falcon's cry pierced the night, an omen known only to those born of the steppe. The Mongol generals exchanged knowing glances. The jaws of the ambush were now locked. Tomorrow, the world would remember this place not as a battlefield, but as a grave for 80,000 souls. When dawn returned, it came not with glory, but with dread. The enemy stirred, expecting to march and crush what they thought was the last remnant of the Mongol horde. Yet, as their columns formed and war drums thundered, the steppe remained eerily still. No charge, no resistance, only whispers of wind brushing through grass. Then, from the hills to the north, riders appeared, retreating as if in fear. The enemy, convinced of their victory, surged forward in pursuit. Trumpets blared, shields clattered. The great war machine of 80,000 men poured toward the fleeing horsemen like a river seeking the sea. What they could not see were the wings of death closing around them. From the east and west ridges, silent columns of Mongol cavalry descended like shadows. Each rider moved with precision, their armor dark and glinting like predatory birds in flight. No horns announced their arrival. The steppe itself seemed to bend and deliver them onto the flanks of the unsuspecting army. In the center of the valley, dust swirled into a thick cloud. Confusion rippled through the ranks. Orders clashed. Some thought they were winning. Others saw movement on the ridges and felt unease. The Mongols, masters of deception, struck with arrows first, silent, whistling death raining from unseen hands. Horses screamed. Men collapsed, clutching throats and eyes, never knowing where the killing began. When the enemy turned to respond, the Mongol retreating force wheeled around like hawks in mid-flight. What had looked like panic was a perfectly timed feint. From front, from sides, from behind, steel and hoof thunder converged. There was no escape, only realization. They had marched willingly into a slaughterhouse built not of walls, but of patience and cunning. The sky darkened with arrows, blotting out the sun. War cries echoed through the valley, not in triumph, but as a chorus of inevitability. The enemy's formation shattered, commanders shouting in desperation as their banners toppled one by one. What had begun as pursuit now became panic, men trampling their own in desperate attempts to flee. Yet every exit was sealed. Every path home was cut. The Mongols had closed the circle. From the heights, Mongol generals watched the chaos unfold with calm precision, their eyes sharp as falcons surveying a hunt. Genghis Khan's teachings lived in every strike. Victory is not in strength alone, but in knowing when the enemy is already defeated in his mind. And indeed, even before the last sword was drawn, despair had seeped into the hearts of the encircled. The battle shifted from arrows to the relentless charge of cavalry. Hooves pounded like thunder, shaking the earth as wave after wave of Mongol horsemen crashed into broken lines. Each strike was not wild slaughter. It was choreography, honed over generations of nomadic warfare. Units split and reformed with fluid grace, cutting through pockets of resistance, driving survivors into tighter clusters where they could be finished swiftly. The enemy, realizing they were surrounded, attempted to form a defensive wall. Shields locked, spears braced, they hoped to buy time for escape. But there was no escape. Mongol engineers, long prepared for this moment, had dragged light catapults and mangonels across the plains. Flaming projectiles arced into the trapped mass, setting tents, wagons, and men ablaze. Smoke choked the valley, turning day into an ominous twilight. Panic spread like wildfire. Horses bolted, commanders fell, communication crumbled. Every attempt to break through Mongol lines met a wall of arrows, or the glint of curved sabers slashing down without mercy. The ground grew slick with blood and ash, making footing treacherous. Then came the final maneuver, a hammer blow delivered with terrifying precision. From the north, heavy cavalry charged in wedge formation, splitting the remnants of the enemy army in two. At that moment, horns bellowed from every ridge. The hills erupted with riders descending in unison, their war cries reverberating off the valley walls like thunderclaps from the gods themselves. Trapped between fire, steel, and horsemen, moving with supernatural coordination, the great army of 80,000 shattered completely. What moments ago was an unstoppable force, now scattered like leaves before a storm. But for most, there was nowhere to run. The slaughter had only begun. The valley became a living nightmare. Everywhere, steel flashed and arrows hissed. The trapped soldiers fought not for victory, but for the slim hope of survival. Some threw down their weapons, hands raised in surrender, but mercy was not the way of the steppe. The Mongols, remembering villages burned and kin slaughtered by these same men, showed no hesitation. Every retreating steppe was answered with a charge, every desperate cry silenced by the whistle of an arrow. Amid the chaos, the Mongols displayed their deadliest weapon, not their bows or blades, but fear itself. They fought as if the earth obeyed them, encircling, collapsing, vanishing, and striking again. Tales would later spread of riders who appeared like phantoms, loosing arrows in mid-gallop, killing without slowing, their movements so fast that men swore demons rode among them. As the slaughter continued, Mongol discipline never wavered. Units rotated seamlessly, archers thinning ranks before fresh cavalry thundered in to shatter what little organization remained. Even the wounded Mongol horses were herded and swapped out swiftly, ensuring no momentum was lost. This was no mere battle. It was a hunting ritual, perfected over generations of survival on the harsh steppe. By midday, the valley floor was carpeted with bodies. Streams ran red. The once proud banners of the enemy army lay torn and trampled into the mud. Those who had survived the first onslaught attempted one last desperate breakout through the southern pass. It was their final mistake. The pass had been left seemingly unguarded, a tantalizing escape. Hope surged among the weary, broken men as they charged for freedom. But just as they entered the narrow gap, concealed riders emerged from hidden gullies. Another wall of arrows filled the sky, raining down on them like blackened hail. Horses collapsed, men screamed, and the narrow path turned into a killing ground with nowhere to turn. The sound of battle slowly faded, replaced by the low groans of the dying and the distant calls of carrion birds already circling overhead. The Mongols rode calmly among the wreckage, ensuring no threat remained. A single ambush had crushed an army 4 times their size, rewriting the balance of power in blood and dust. But even as silence settled over the valley, the Mongols knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning of something far greater. As evening fell, the sky burned orange, casting long shadows over the desolate valley. The battle was over, but the story of this ambush was only beginning to echo across the steppe and beyond. Mongol riders moved silently through the carnage, finishing wounded enemies swiftly, not out of cruelty, but necessity. Survivors were few and scattered, destined to carry tales of terror back to their homelands. The generals gathered on a low ridge overlooking the field, their faces stern yet calm. They spoke little. Words were unnecessary when victory was absolute. The trap had worked to perfection, not just in destroying an army, but in sending a message that would ripple through kingdoms like thunder rolling across distant mountains. Genghis Khan's strategies had again proven unstoppable. To the untrained eye, this victory might have seemed miraculous, a stroke of luck or divine favor. But the truth was far more formidable. This was warcrafted as art. From the first sighting of the enemy, every movement had been calculated. Scouts had mapped terrain weeks in advance, supply lines sabotaged, morale eroded long before swords ever clashed. Even the ambush's final killing blow had been rehearsed in the minds of the generals countless times before it unfolded on the battlefield. That night, under the starlit sky, Mongol fires burned bright on every ridge. Riders returned in waves, reporting captured spoils, weapons, banners, surviving officers taken as prisoners for interrogation. It wasn't just a battle won, it was intelligence gathered, new lands opened to conquest, fear sown like seeds in every direction. Among the camp, songs rose, not of joy, but of remembrance. They honored fallen comrades and ancestors who had ridden these plains long before empire building was imagined. For the Mongols, victory was never only about land or plunder, it was survival. The enduring law of the steppe, hunt or be hunted. As dawn approached once again, the riders prepared to vanish into the horizon. When travelers would later come across this valley, they would find only silence and bleached bones, never knowing how a phantom army had appeared, struck, and disappeared like the wind. The story would become legend, the hidden ambush that swallowed 80,000 men whole. And for those who survived to tell it, one truth became clear. When the Mongols rode unseen, death followed silently behind. The echoes of battle still whisper across the steppes. Don't let these ancient tales fade into silence. Subscribe, like, and join us as we unveil the secrets of history's most fearsome warriors.